I do think that like quote unquote lived experience, which is a phrase that I know is like triggering and controversial, does obviously inform people's perspectives, right? It's not dispositive. The problem is thinking, oh, you're Black, so everything you say about Blackness or race is accurate. Oh, you're trans, so you're an authority, and as though there's not disagreements between people within these groups. But I want to be able to acknowledge that your identity isn't dispositive of whether you're right or wrong, but also not completely deny the reality that someone who has kind of no exposure to something, is largely uninformed. I think it's legitimate to be like, you just don't know what you're talking about. And part of that might be because you don't have personal exposure, but it's also probably because you haven't read anything about it or listened to other people. And I'm hesitant to be like, oh yes, identity is like not, it ain't it. When obviously it's just, I would trust a plumber about what's going on with my toilet more than I would a non-plumber. That doesn't mean plumbers can't be wrong. It doesn't mean that there are people who aren't plumbers who know how to like fix my flow problems.
Well, isn't there also a question of, okay, we're uninformed about a lot of each other's lived experiences. Well, I guess we can just keep using that term until a better one comes along, even though I hate hearing it.
How about experiences?
Just experiences, just worldviews, just lives, just all
lives.
Just all
I like lives.
Lives.
Yeah. We're all uninformed. And there are obviously these differences in the circumstances of employment and income and growing up and racial identity and so on and so forth. Isn't there also a question of, okay, you've got to educate yourself. Well, who gets to decide what is representative of a certain group, of who the representatives of a certain shared experience, are?
Yeah, when it's like flatly demanded, like listen to marginalized people, just listen. And it's like, okay, that's not necessarily the greatest like injunction because, but listen to listen to trans people. Okay, which trans people? Like, there's a widespread disagreement. It is actually likely, in fact, that if someone Googles what you want them to Google to listen to trans people, the first thing that's going to come up is, in fact, a conservative trans person saying the exact opposite of what you want them to believe when you say believe trans people. So that really is not a helpful kind of, I think it's not a helpful demand to say like, oh, just listen to trans people. Well, you're just basically telling someone to go get a trans alibi to support whatever the thing is they're already saying, which is easy to do because there's plenty of trans people who are happy to do that.
I mean, Caitlyn Jenner is challenging Governor Cuomo. Gavin Newsom.
Yeah. Like a lot of times, like the most visible people, the most like readily accessible megaphones coming from marginalized voices are often people saying like regressive, reactionary stuff. Listen to people of color, listen to Kanye West, listen to, like, you know what I mean? Like people, it's not a sufficient, not a sufficient demand.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder how you are navigating all of this right now. It's gotta be hard. I mean, your video on cancellation obviously did mega numbers and is incredibly good and popular. And no one wants to be defined by such a difficult kind of moment that, a video that you had to do because you're kind of compelled by the realities of online existence. But as a person who is at the beginning of her kind of media career, I am really fascinated by these questions of intimacy, performed intimacy, the consequences of opening yourself up, how to deal and communicate on these online platforms in a way that is effective. And I may or may not be in the middle of a little bit of a Twitter spat today myself. Well, so that is informing this kind of inquiry.
I mean, I think one thing that I've started realizing over time as I spend more and more time with people who are just constantly in the public eye, are constantly on social media, especially people who are involved in some ways in some kind of progressive cause, is that every single one of them is 100% of the time being canceled all the time, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not like it almost at a certain point it stops becoming like an event or an incident. I mean, there's like individual events or incidents, but it kind of becomes just the nonstop like background of your public existence, right? I mean, I don't think a single name a public figure in 2021 who isn't constantly sort of shrouded in controversy, right? It's just
Johnny's son.
Who?
Who?
Johnny Sun.
Who's that?
He writes these books for children, for adults who have the brains of children.
Okay.
Well, okay, yeah, or maybe like I don't know. I guess like Tom Hanks. Like people seem to like Tom Hanks.
I mean, wasn't there a COVID thing where he got COVID? He was one of the early celebrities who got COVID.
Oh, yeah.
And wasn't there some stuff about how he was privileged for...
QAnon canceled Tom Hanks. He was
his
like
son-
secretly executed in Greece or something like that for the child trafficking.
Okay, boy.
So
Yeah, and
even
it's-
he's canceled.
There's
and
also
it's-
the
and-
Chet Hanks tie-in. Can you get canceled by your progeny's acts?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, I think that's. I think that counts. Yeah. So it's kind of like, I don't know. I feel that I kind of want to move away from the cancel culture as like a phrase to describe this, because I feel like what this is not really a cultural event or a cultural norm. It's more of a product of social media, right?
Yeah.
I think it's sort of an inevitable product maybe of this technology that whenever, the appeal of Twitter in the first place is that you can go directly interact, right, with almost any public figure. That's appealing, but it also means that everyone's opinions about you are constantly like, you're sort of swimming in opinions about yourself if you're a public figure. And psychologically, like I don't think that's normal. I don't think that's healthy. Like, I don't know, has any psychologist studied what it does to your brain to read 2,000 opinions about yourself every day?
Yeah.
I mean, it's as if you were granted the power to read minds and heard what everyone around you was thinking about you all the time. Anyone would go crazy in a week's time. And I feel like that's kind of what's going on with social media, is like so much this excess of feedback, including stuff that's like so not productive. I don't know. I just feel like I see a lot of public figures kind of losing their sanity and losing their sort of grounding as they become, I'm trying not to do this myself, trying not to become completely obsessed with the haters, right? Or completely obsessed with what people are saying about you online. It's very easy to do.
I think one of the original appeals of social media was, it's the democratization aspect. It's a place I can go and I can say to someone who has a highly paid influential position that they do not deserve, I could say to David Brooks, like, go fuck yourself. You're a huge piece of shit and your opinions are fucking bad and they're not actually popular and you're only speaking to a tiny, sliver of an elite audience and you do not deserve your position. Sub David Brooks for, I don't know, any number of like hundreds and hundreds of people or politicians or things like that. And, at first that was, kind of shocking. And there was like this whole kind of like, oh, we're so insulted from the old guard. But then eventually, all right, they learn how to play the game and make money off it. Out of the outrage and things like that. And now, every Republican politician fundraises off the fact that they trigger the libs. Like, and will include your nasty little tweet and say like, oh, this is evidence I'm being canceled. Please give to my, the Republican National Senate Committee. And I think there's a fact that the people who have actual influence, who have actual wealth, are now basically totally insulated from any kind of consequences about, like, I can go and grouse about Elon Musk and what a piece of shit he is on Twitter. It's not going to do anything. Like, he's turning that into a way to make money. And so that means that if you actually really want to get under someone's skin, then you just got to go for a softer target, which is someone who's not actually influential, someone who's not actually a billionaire, a member of the bourgeoisie, but someone who just like has 100,000 subscribers on YouTube and is the closest thing to a powerful, influential person who might actually read my comments.